and being from the lower middle class, he tried to find a trade. At 15, apprenticed to James Vizier, an engraver of renown. He starts to jot his first ideas down. However, as his attendance at the Royal Academy should show, poetry wasn't really clearly on his manifesto. He focused instead upon his painting, his engraving, and his art. His verse had yet to play a major part. After marrying Catherine Boucher and moving to Leicester Square, he published poetical sketches, but it seemed that no one cared. He tried to run a printing shop to gain the public's trust, but that went wrong and soon the shop went bust. In 1789, however, the year the Bastille fell, Blake began working on the marriage of heaven and hell. In this seminal piece, he argues against the institution of the church. He liked the ideas of Swedenborg, and it was for spirituality he now searched. So it was the same year that in Swedenborg's defense, he published his most famous book called Songs of Innocence. This collection of deceptively simple verse was ostensibly aimed at kids. It looked a lot less complex than it is. However, so about 4 years later, to show the public what he was really doing, Blake republished Innocence with an attendant new volume, called Songs of Experience, couched in more blatant terms, Blake's social and religious concerns. However, the problem with the controversial stance that he had dared to take was that despite his genius, still nobody cared. His books had his gorgeous illustrations at the time, genre-defying, but the shelves of whence precisely they weren't flying. And so the Songs of Innocence in 1789, or 1790's Marriage and the Other Works around that time, or 1793's Experience on 94's Year Up, were all essentially side projects, only his illustrations stopped him going broke. And to keep himself in bread at this point, he started illustrating really seriously, and he did the works of Thomas Gray and the other great British poets from the generation before him, really. But the Elegy in a Country Churchyard, which is a poem some of you may be familiar with, he illustrated the first edition of that. And this was at a time when illustration was a costly and fairly innovative way of decorating a book, you know. He was really a pioneer in that field, which is, I mean, people think of Tiger burning bright when they hear the name William Blake. They don't realise what a force he was in the world of illustration and of bringing that medium into the public fore. In 1809, Blake used his brother's household in an exhibition of his pics, but only the Examiner noticed and called him, quotes, an unfortunate lunatic, end quotes. By this time he'd published his epics Milton and Jerusalem, but still it seemed that no one really knew him. Then in 1815, news of the poet's genius started to spread, which is weird because after that year not much was published. It flourished in obscurity when he had nothing to lose. With anonymity it seems he lost his muse. However, he was still by no means the famous poet of his day. Innocence, his most famous book, sold less than 100 copies. Before he died in 27 with a smile on his face, his busy life had seldom slackened pace. When time passed and there was a wane of religious inhibition, and possibly because of this, Blake's work finally gained recognition. He's now part of the canon, children study him from the start, and it's unlikely that anyone else has achieved such high levels of success in the twin combined fields of both poetry and art, and he's still famous today. Woo!